What's up guys, Sean here, and today I want to talk about Andy Signore fighting to get his reputation back. A couple of years ago, Andy Signore was known as one of the founders and creators of the Screen Junkies YouTube channel, including being one of the founders and creators of the extremely popular Honest Trailers video series, which premieres on this platform. You may have also known Andy as the host and judge of the long-running series Movie Fights, which also plays on the Screen Junkies YouTube channel. Now, the reason I started off this video of what you might have known Andy as at one point in time is because now Andy Signore's name and face are deeply tied to the Me Too movement, as Andy Signore is the second public figure to be taken down by the Me Too movement. And one of the reasons associating Andy Signore with the Me Too movement is really strong amongst YouTube audiences is because the Screen Junkies channel is one of those rare things that bridge the gap between YouTube and Hollywood. So more so than any other figure that I can remember, Andy Signore's downfall was both a huge story on YouTube and a huge story in the entertainment media. And the reason Andy Signore's name has been so tarnished by the media is largely due to one woman who accused Andy Signore of being a sexual predator. Now, if you're vaguely familiar with this story, you might have seen headlines about multiple women accusing Andy Signore of sexual impropriety, but when you delve into the details of the cases at hand, you find that Andy Signore was only really accused of a crime by one person. Everybody else was accusing him of awkwardly flirting with them while he was married. Now, shortly after the accusations had dropped, Defy Media, which owned Screen Junkies at the time, decided that it was appropriate to fire Andy Signore from Screen Junkies. And because Andy Signore was fired, he decided to file a lawsuit against Defy Media that was settled a couple of months ago. And due to the fact that Andy had an ongoing case against Defy Media, he was prohibited from commenting publicly on the matter at hand, despite the fact that his accusers, or one accuser, because one person, once again, was accusing him of criminality, could run roughshod and basically destroy his reputation in the public eye. Now, while the case was going on, Andy did say that he would eventually come out with his side of the story and it would prove that his accuser was lying about him. And boy, did Andy deliver in a video that he dropped yesterday about the matter. Now, before I get into this video, I do recommend that you guys go over to Andy Signore's channel and subscribe. I recommend you watch the full video so you can see what I believe is irrefutable, incontrovertible evidence that proves that his accuser is lying. And I'm also going to recommend that you follow him on Twitter, because the media ripped Andy Signore up and down when the accusations were coming out. And it seems like nobody in the media is covering his response, despite the fact that his response has evidence that specifically refutes the factual claims of his primary accuser. So the video, Andy's channel, and his Twitter handle will all be in the description box below. I recommend you subscribe and follow him on everything so you can stay up to date and you can help get this story out there, because it's not right that you tear up somebody's reputation and you don't even give them a chance, not even a 1% chance, to defend themselves in the court of public opinion. But without further ado, let's get into the video.
The first time he used Chicago Comic-Con by saying they were having a Screen Junkies party and I was invited. The party ended up being him alone in his hotel room trying to force himself on me. This is the first easy lie to prove. I did meet April in August 2015 at a convention in Chicago. We talked a lot and I thought she was funny, and I didn't know anyone in Chicago. So we ended up exchanging numbers, which prompted some mutually flirtatious texts, including her offering to be a discreet, weird groupie for me. I invited her to my hotel room to watch a movie, which she was completely up for. There was no tricking her into a party. She knew we were discreetly chatting. I flat out asked her, "Wanna just hang out in my room and watch a movie or something?" She agreed. Then later asked, "Am I just bringing my sparkling personality?" I responded, "Whatever you want. I'm not sure what we're gonna do. Cute, nerdy girl coming up to my hotel room? I've never done that."
So right here, a major point in Andy's accuser's story completely falls apart. And while we're on the subject of Andy's accuser, please, for the love of God, do not go out of your way to contact this woman in any way, shape, or form. The last thing that you should give this person is another way to claim that she's being victimized either by Andy Signore or his followers. But that being said, here you have clear and unambiguous evidence that part of her story is completely false. The claim was that Andy Signore lured her to his hotel room under false pretenses. He promised her that there would be a Screen Junkies party, but to her shock and surprise, she ended up in a hotel room alone with Andy. But we can see clearly through the text messages produced by Andy Signore that that is not the case. She knew specifically that Andy Signore was alone in the hotel. In fact, she agreed to meet Andy Signore in the hotel room under the idea that they would basically Netflix and chill. Now, I paused this video when I was watching it, and I read every single text message on screen because I didn't want to take Andy's word for it and just go with what he was highlighting. And doing that and reading every single message in their broader context, it didn't give me the impression that Andy Signore was leaving something significant out that completely changes this. I did learn that Andy is incredibly awkward and corny when he's hitting on women, but that is not a criminal offense.
April wanted to see me, and she was very much into the idea of being on the show again. We were communicating daily and talked about her visiting me again in Los Angeles. She then told me that her boss was a big fan and he would be more lenient about time off from work and going to California if she had the opportunity to be on the show. I told her no problem, so we figured out a date and she quickly booked her own ticket. None of this was mentioned in any of April's statements. Instead, her lies and false allegations continued, saying that she was later invited by Screen Junkies to come out to LA to be on the fan cam. She says I stopped by her hotel uninvited and took a sex toy out of my bag and tried to use it on her. Our texts clearly reveal we planned the visit. As a matter of fact, we had been constantly talking about hooking up while she visited, and she very clearly invited me to her hotel room. I did not show up to her hotel room uninvited.
Now, this is the second time that Andy has produced clear and incontrovertible proof that the woman accusing him of something has falsehoods in her story. She claimed that Andy just showed up randomly at her hotel room, when that is factually not the case. You can clearly see that the encounter was planned for them to meet up for a hookup. You can see clearly in the text messages that she gave Andy her hotel room. Furthermore, she claims that Andy flew her out under the pretense that she was going to be on the Screen Junkies fan cam, and then threatened her in order to coerce sexual favors from her, when the text messages show the complete and total opposite. If you watch the video or read through the conversation on your own, they clearly discussed hooking up, and that was the reason she flew out to LA, and she said her boss would approve of her taking the time off if she was on the Screen Junkies fan cam, because her boss was a huge fan of Screen Junkies. So this isn't one detail that was misconstrued or relayed improperly. This is stating the exact opposite of what the evidence shows us is the reality of the situation. There were also allegations that Andy photographed her against her will without her knowing, but you can clearly see in the video that she sent Andy photos of her via email.
April says I took photos of her without her permission. This is false. In fact, our emails clearly show that April was the one who sent various nude photos to me. I have blurred them here in an effort to take the high road. But I assure you, they are not just scantily clad photos. They are sexually explicit, and she very clearly sent them to me herself. They are also clearly of her. This is also confirmed over texts. These photos are real, and they provide graphic evidence that April has not been telling the truth.
So after seeing Andy refute point by point the criminal allegations against him, I decided to go and see if there was a public response that actually addressed this, maybe something that would add more context to this. And I was very unsatisfied from what I got from the two people in question. April, the woman in question, released this statement via Twitter. When I came forward a few years ago, I knew everything that was displayed in the video today could be made public. I decided to go forward regardless because I wanted to make sure no harm would come to any more women. I was ready then and I'm ready now to take the hits, comments, or criticisms you can throw at me. Because at the end of the day, I know my truth and what I did was right. I was a teenager and I made mistakes and I've had to live with them. I'm not giving any more of my time and energy to this. I'm moving on for my own mental health. Thanks to all those who continue to support me as I learn and grow. Now, before I go over her statement, I want to go over the statement of JTE, a former employee at Screen Junkies who ended up seeing April. Now, the reason I'm reading his statement is because according to the allegations by April, Signore would threaten her with his job if she didn't comply with his advances. I saw Mr. Sociopath's video. I've lived and read everything you've seen and haven't seen for the past few years. I'm not giving another moment of my time or energy to him. We're moving forward. Believe and follow him if you want. I could care less. Now, both of these statements say that the person in question wants to move forward. And honestly, for me, that's not good enough. You can't accuse somebody in the court of public opinion, shred them when they can't defend themselves, and then when they actually produce evidence to show that there are holes in your story, say you want to move on because you're over the story. Andy didn't get a reprieve. Andy didn't get to move on. And if these guys have more evidence and have more context that proves that Andy is not telling the truth, I'm perfectly willing to see it. What I'm not willing to do is take your word for it when you allude to vague evidence that totally proves you're right, but you just don't want to show because you're over the situation and it's time to move on. If you have the proof, then show it. That's what Andy did, and it looks like the facts are on his side. Now, unless you guys get this story out there and get it some media coverage, this is where it's going to end. Because the narrative had a multi-year head start against Andy Signore, it's virtually impossible for him to battle back against it. Unfortunately, we live in a society where informal allegations via Twitter can ruin somebody's life overnight, while fighting back the legal and proper way like Andy Signore did against Defy Media takes years, and those years worked against Andy in that he couldn't defend himself in the public arena. Andy, since the beginning of this scandal, has always acknowledged that he made mistakes and those mistakes cost him his marriage, but I can't help but think that fighting the legal battle first really cost him in the reputation department in the long run. So I reached out to Andy Signore and I asked him, knowing what he knows now, and if he could go back to this point and make a decision on whether or not to fight this in the civil courts or fight this in the court of public opinion, would he still take the same path? And while Andy made it clear that he could not in any way, shape, or form comment on anything related to the case, this is how he responded.
Hard question to answer since I can't discuss the case. But looking back from it all and stepping back, would I have rather publicly come forward then? I mean, it's easy to say yes, but I don't think I would have been ready. I think I needed to go through some of my own growth and education to truly handle this. It's been hard, and I needed the time and I needed the distance to really help me see a lot of things about myself and about what happened to me. And I've become a firm believer of everything happens for a reason. So I think it's easy to go back and say, should I have done this, should I have done that? But in this instance, I'm pretty happy with how it's turning out, and I'm happy about my future. I hope this can finally give me an opportunity to find some employment and keep doing what I'm doing, and gain back some of my supporters. It's been really rough to have people just consider me toxic and ignore me, and not want to even associate with me. I hope seeing my video and me taking my accountability will help some of them come back and give me another shot.
Now look, that's a nice answer. It's a lot nicer than the answer I would have given had I been in Andy's shoes, but I understand that when bad things happen, and so many bad things happen in a row, you have to try to make some kind of sense of it. Anyway, that's really where I want to wrap this up. I'm mentioning again that I have Andy's social media links, YouTube, Twitter, etc. in the description box down below. I definitely recommend that you check him out. I definitely recommend you check out his full video in full context to make sure I'm not leaving anything out, and stay updated on the case because this already had a complete 180 from what we thought it was before, and it's important to not just jump from one camp to the other and actually follow through and do the work. I would hope the lesson of this would be to hear both sides and not just become tribal in the other direction. You guys know the drill. Like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. Till next time.